A Song of Ice and Fire? No. The Night of the Seven Kingdoms? No. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Third time is the charm. Season 1 has wrapped. I'm going to give my thoughts and a little bit of a breakdown as to what happens. I have a lot to say, good and bad. So don't come for me in the comments, okay? I know people really liked it. And I did. I really loved it. It was fantastic. So many good things. It really feels like it's brought the entire world and brand back. I do have some critiques though, so let's get into it. So this is Main Archetype, where I cover pop culture and generally media commentary. I want to talk about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms today. I don't think I said it at the beginning, but let me add it in. And editing me put this earlier on. Spoilers ahead, of course. We're going to be talking about A Song of Ice and Fire in general, the world, the characters, the ending, and of course A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So be aware from this point on. Okay, should we start with the good? I feel like if I start with the good, then all of the trolls won't go too harsh in the comments, and then I can say my critiques later. Or if you truly are a troll at heart, you'll stick around to the end to hear what I have to say and then drop a comment. Either's fine. Interact in any way you will. So first and foremost, I think I am in the popular opinion here when I say the cinematography of this season was truly incredible. Some scenes and some shots specifically, the framing, the callbacks were truly gorgeous. And I mean, not gonna lie, I think A Game of Thrones, the main series, still has some of the best scenes per se. I will never forget the scene where, spoilers ahead, Cersei blows up the citadel, the piano in the background, the music, the build up. Honestly, probably for me, the best scene in all media. However, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms comes closely behind with just a gorgeous, consistent level of beauty in the framing, cinematography, and that is probably the main takeaway I think most of us have. So the story follows Dunk the Tall, which is one of the novellas that George R. Martin has obviously released from quite a while ago, and his tales and what happens to him with young little Egg, who, as of the end of season 1, and many of us that read the novellas know, is one of the Targaryens. And it's a very fantastic commentary on the small folk of Westeros and the world, kind of comparison and difference in class, and the nobles, the lords, the kings, to the small folk, the blacksmiths, the whores, as it were, and the hedge knights. Not the stuttering to say the word whore. I forget how unfriendly the verbiage needed to talk about Game of Thrones is on YouTube. I read the novellas when they originally came out, which now is absolutely years ago. So I had kind of some recollection of what would happen. I remembered Egg was a Targaryen from the beginning, and I knew about Sir Dunk the Tall, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't remember too much. And I don't want to say plot twist, because it's not quite a plot twist, but where the series goes in the kind of Baelor Targaryen, the fight of the seven, I don't think I remembered that. Maybe when I read it, I didn't quite grasp it. I think after reading A Song of Ice and Fire in full and understanding about the world of Westeros, you can kind of connect to any of the media in a different way, because every callback, every commentary, every in-world comment on history and stuff kind of makes sense. And without that, when you first go in blind, it's a bit overwhelming. So I think when I read the novellas originally, I didn't quite understand what was going on. But so watching it back now, all understood, and a really good kind of twist on where you think this season is going to go. I mean, initially you imagine you're going to see Sir Duncan in the tourney. You could even imagine he does really well, and then it's a underdog story. We don't actually really see much of the tourney through Sir Duncan participating in it. The build up towards that is what we assume is going to happen in the end, but no, we see the fight of the seven, which was split over 2 episodes. We're gonna put a pin in that, because plot twist, I may have some critiques on how the end happened, but it builds up to that really fantastically, and no one can deny the clear amount of work they put into the fight scene at the end, the actual fight of the seven, how that in itself felt like a callback to war episodes like the Battle of the Bastards, and the greater nitty-gritty fighting that A Game of Thrones is also known for. I'm trying not to say too much because I have got critiques and I don't want to say them too early. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms also brought in several new elements to this media version of the world of A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. There was clearly a humour that everyone would be aware of by now that hasn't really been present before. Game of Thrones, yes, was very funny, but it was very clever funny. It was very high end, like quips and remarks, and basically Tyrion like being funny. Whereas this was outright slapstick, poopy farty humor, and I think it did it really well, and it did it well enough to not make it too disjointed from the rest of the world. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a 34-year-old woman. There's an extent that poopy and farty jokes will make me laugh, but sure, I mean, I can't sit here and say poopy farty jokes aren't funny and then go and watch the Bold and the Beautiful podcast where they literally do the same thing and I'm wheezing over my coffee in the morning. So fine, you got me there.
Eat shit and die.
Yeah.
Figuratively, of course. I would never hurt another human being.
Also, another theme that I want to talk about more at the end, but like I will comment on it at the beginning here because it was new for this series, but like they had a kind of breaking of tension with a comic relief right from the intro shot where you get the kind of I'm not going to do it because I think it's cringe when people sing it on episodes where you get the main theme tune starting and Sir Duncan the Tall's looking all brave with his sword, and then it cuts to him doing a poopy poop. Funny, shit humor, but like they actually consistently use this through the whole series where they're breaking this expected grand, finish with high music in the background and a lore of heroism, and they break it with this like funny kind of cuts or, humor. That guy that spits a lot, I don't know. So yeah, was that great? It was. And I'll add this to one of the good things that happened in the fight of the Seven when Sir Duncan is getting his ass royally whipped, quite literally. They break that trend by when he stands up in his glorious final moments and the music builds and you're getting like, I don't know if it's a zoom, but like cinematography wise, it's also intense. You're getting this ramp of like high energy. I almost felt myself expecting it to be broken and someone to like fart or like to be sick or to like poop. And it doesn't. And it holds you in that moment. And I remember watching that and thinking that was truly a fantastic scene because it's broken its own rule and convention of like breaking the tension, and it holds you in it. And I think obviously at the best part of the series and the most important part, and Sir Duncan really is now a knight in his own way, and I think they did that really well. Really, I love a series that can make a rule and break it by the end of the series. That's really good storytelling. Now let's get into my critiques, because I do have some. I mean, I understand. Night of the Seven Kings was so good, even Hassan Piker was raving about it. Okay, I get it.
The new Game of Thrones show. Oh my God. Dude, it is, I just like, I'm not going to give you spoilers. I'm just going to say it's peak.
It was good. It was really good. I do, however, have some critiques. As a House of the Dragon girly, can't stress enough how much I love that show way more. I love the Targaryen line coverage. I love Rhaenyra Targaryen's character. I love the introduction of like the Valerion family, Baela Targaryen, like all of my faves. Loved them, gorgeous, incredible. And for me, okay, and we can all tell Night of the Seven Kingdoms was very different to House of the Dragon. Groundbreaking analysis we have in media here today. But like, I think that the timing of A Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms was quite jarring to me. And let me explain what I mean by that. House of the Dragon was very much the High Lords, the kings and queens, the fight, the civil war of the Targaryen line. You can't really kind of get much higher than that in class. And the small folk, quite literally in some scenes, are an afterthought. To juxtapose that with a Night of the Seven Kingdoms, to me, timing-wise, was quite jarring. Now, I know that might have been a point, but jarring not just in a sense of like, oh my God, now we're talking about class war, now we're talking about the small folk, but there were elements of A Song of Ice and Fire that brought A Game of Thrones into modern day. Bear in mind, the first season of Game of Thrones was written decades ago and filmed decades ago, and now House of the Dragon has this newfound energy and budget and modernization. Now, there are critiques of that too. I don't know how I feel about Abigail Thorne in House of the Dragon. Like, I'm happy for her, but did it pull me out of it? God, yeah, it did. So, of course, yeah, there's an extent to that. But it did need modernizing. It needed far more female characters. It needed much more representation, people of color. It needed to bring to light elements of Westeros that were already there. They were already there, and they had just not been put in the same show. So like A Song of Ice and Fire had representation. It had female characters and really good characterization. It had, you know, people of color, gay representation, as bad as it all was. The comments that we can say about that aside, it was there. Whereas for me, House of the Dragon pulled those out and drew them out really well, and it needed to for a modern audience, for a Game of Thrones to be modern and to be relevant. I feel like The Night of the Seven Kingdoms has just taken it right back. And I don't know if that's intentional, but from my understanding of media, every frame is a choice. And for me, it felt like we went right back to season 1 of A Game of Thrones, and not necessarily in all the good ways. Like, let's talk about this. I mean, people of color, like any representation of race other than white was minimal at best. You had the main love interest, gorgeous, lovely, and then Rafe as well, adjacent. But like those two characters mainly being the only non-white characters, it was also to me a little bit like a bit tokeny. I know it's not like completely my place to say, and I would love to, you know, see other people's opinions of this that have much more of a connection. But like for me, I don't know, it was definitely not enough, and also it felt very forced. And you then also had the issue of the one, you know, or in the modern timeline of A Song of Ice and Fire, the one, you know, non-white character was basically dropped halfway through. And then in the past, the flashbacks, the one non-white adjacent character, still very light-skinned, still very like, you know, not very good representation in general, one could say, but like you still had that person dying. Like, so it was very much like, oh, okay, like that's very tokeny to me. I don't know, that's just my feeling. I am not, it's not really for me to comment on this, so to take that with a pinch of salt, but that's how I felt. And then I only remember like the one frame, I think it was Baelor's funeral, where it had the other like Targaryen family, and it had the lineage that we know from House of Dragon, and you could see like people of color with the Targaryen hair, which was great to see. But like, again, that was just a background shot like that. I don't know, for me, bear in mind, right, we're gonna get the, like, you know, the manosphere are gonna cancel me for this take, but like commenting specifically on the small folk and the class structure, I think was also an opportunity to represent every different kind of person and make a connection to the fact that why are the nobles and the kings and stuff all a certain type? That's not okay. Like, that could have very much been very effortlessly a part of the characterization of the small folk. All different kinds of people. Westeros and Essos and the whole lore that George R. Martin has created has various different regions of people and races and types, and that could have been shown in a positive way to be diversity in the small folk. And also we know in lore, like, it is like what's his name? Salisandar? I can't remember. The trade merchant guy, like, had more screen time. Like, I don't know, this just like wasn't done well in A Game of Thrones, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms seems to have been worse. And actually, before we get to a kind of a secondary point to that, I also want to make my hot take. Okay, so if you stuck around this long, this is my big hot take, my one critique. The flashbacks in Night of the Seven Kingdoms were wonderful, and I think they really added to the storytelling, and they did it in a way that felt fresh and new. I do think that completely. And Rafe's flashback, which characterizes like Duncan and why he is how he is, was also really good, necessary, and well written and done. However, okay, imagine if the Rafe flashback was, instead of just played in the last episode, in the final fight scene, which to me kind of took me out of it way too much. Like, I just wanted to see the fight scene happen and enjoy it, gobble, 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 and then repercussion. The flashback that happened with Wraith, I think, should have been a constant storyline, a subplot, if you will, since from the very beginning. I mean, we started with flashbacks of Sir Duncan's like original like mentor, and we saw his anatomy for some reason, and like him fucking women, great. So like, again, very boyish. We'll get back to that. We will so get back to the boyishness. But still, if we had the entire, even if the flashback was the same flashback, not a single extra minute of screen time, and we had that split across the whole thing, imagine how much more effect it would have had. So, for example, when the main love interest, beautiful, gorgeous lady, when Duncan first sees her getting attacked, we could have had the flashback with what happened to Rafe at that point to give us far more justification as to why Duncan is going to attack this prince or this high person of royalty. And at the time, I remember watching it and feeling like, okay, I get that he's angry, but would you really attack someone that you know is going to kill you for doing so? And if we had had that flashback with Rafe earlier on, the justification would have been there. So you wouldn't have been taken away from that scene to be like, yeah, but would you really do that? You would be fully in it and oh my God, he's doing that because of the thing that had happened in the past. We don't hear about that until a couple episodes later. And at the same time, that entire flashback scene, which all the way led to his mentor saying those lines get up, to get Duncan up to keep fighting, those two things did not need to be put together. They were separate to me. We go from that thing with Rafe and the justification as to why Duncan is how he is, and it hurt him, obviously. That's distressing and distraught, terrible. And then he follows the mentor and gets ill until the mentor takes him in. Those two things did not need to be together. And it was a very long cutscene to have in the middle of a fight scene. So I think they should have split the flashbacks, had them continuously as this subplot, introduce young Dunk earlier when we're still learning about young Egg and we haven't technically learned he's a Targaryen yet, and made those connections. And they did connect them with cinematography, absolutely, and they did that flawlessly. But that doesn't quite carry the same nuance as telling two stories at once. And then I think the final fight scene at the end would have had so much more final period on the sentence energy to it. Like I said earlier about breaking that convention about cutting off a tension building scene, cutting off the music, cutting off and having someone pooing, breaking that and having this heroic stance where he does stand up and he's winning, and it's goosebump inducing. That I think no flashback, or a very small flashback to him getting up from being told to get up by his mentor that Egg is then mirroring in the sidelines, would have had so much more impact. I don't know, that's just me. Now please let me know in the comments if you agree, if you thought the same thing. I would love to hear from you. Let me know at this point. Now, so I will have to say a little bit more about my little woke opinion on things. So we talked about generally representation in the Night of the Seven Kingdoms being, I think, to me, a bit lacking. But I also want to talk about female characterization. I mean, it's such an obvious thing, but someone has to say it. There were 2 characters that were female that had any decent screen time and decent lines, and one of them, well, 3 including Rafe, if you will, but one of them is attacked and left the area without a goodbye scene. One of them is killed, and then the other one is a prostitute that then is married, and the audience as well as Dunk are left with this opinion of her that she is scheming and conniving against Appleboy. I don't know. I don't know his name is Appleboy. Redwyn. I'm just saying, there's a far cry from A House of the Dragon that had so much female characterization and so much female intent to motives and female characters that have been brought into the light and is focused about them. I feel like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms I feel like it was a personal choice to counteract that. It was very much giving the Olympic hockey team eating McDonald's in Trump's White House. It was very much was this on purpose? Was this trying to counteract the feminization of the world of A Song of Ice and Fire that came about from House of the Dragon, which is innately a very sexist culture, and it's a very sexist lore which is drawn from medieval realism that George R. R. Martin has done. We all understand this. I'm not saying I want to break the law, because that would just be overdoing it, and I understand that, but to step back, to kind of go backwards from what we already had with a Game of Thrones and a House of Dragon. I don't know, it just felt okay, I get it, there are so many boys and they're all fighty, evil, and they're all lovely characters. The Baratheon Horns guy was incredible. I loved Baelor Targaryen. It was a really good representation of a good leader, knowing everyone's names. That really warmed my heart. all of the characters were great, don't get me wrong, but like, really, 3 women in the whole thing? Like, the maid, the inn at the beginning had like better screen time. Like, I don't know, like, considering as well, when we have such a rich text where there are so many sisters, mums, aunts, and female characters, it's not like they're not there to draw upon. It's a choice not to include them. And you might be saying like, yeah, but it's a story about men fighting and knights and stuff. It's like, yeah, and a Game of Thrones challenged that with Brienne of Tarth, who was also tall. Like, there was no even like a callback to that when there were so many callbacks to so many other things. And again, we're talking about the small folk and the class structure and the average person, and yet all we have is like the big burly blacksmith and the drunk like knight that takes Dunk under his wing, and the male Kingsguard and like the male Targaryens. It's just like, wow, okay, like, you didn't even have a Varys type, a feminine male. You didn't have any, I believe, any gay representation, which Game of Thrones had throughout. Like, you didn't have any of those choices. And I think, like, to go from Game of Thrones to House of Dragon, where a lot of that was added and included, to not include it or to not even maintain it to the same representation that's been done, to me is a choice. I don't know. Every frame is a choice. That's going to be my motto from going forward. But like, let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm reading too much into it. But as a woman watching it, I mean, my husband is not huge on this kind of this world and Game of Thrones, but he enjoyed it tremendously. Like Hassan Packer, like I said, raving about this. And I do feel like though it didn't seem as much place as a woman watching this for me to sit and enjoy it. I had no through line. I had no female character to be like, I am her, like, yes, slay, like Rhaenyra Targaryen or Daenerys Targaryen or fucking, I don't know, Talisa Stark. Like, there was no character other than the puppeteer who barely says anything, the prostitutes, or the maid in. Like, there was no one else to be like, yeah, she's an icon, she slays. Like, which this story is so full of. So to not include, I just think was a waste. I don't know. I just think that like people would take for granted maybe how inclusive Game of Thrones was so effortlessly with like non-ableist representation. Like the scene when Tyrion brings Bran his like design to make like a kind of seat so he can ride a horse, and the kindness it does to his family, like effortlessly including like a variety of people. Like it just really gave men on men. I don't know, men not in a good way. Just men and bros, lads. Like, I don't know. And in this climate, really, let's just say I'm really excited for House of the Dragon season 3. I hope it brings us back to where we were, and we get to see some cool fucking dragons and hype on the Targaryen train once more. Anyway, that's all from me today. Let me know what you think about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the first season, down below. It is nice to just see an extension of the world of Westeros and everywhere else. So let me know your thoughts. I can't wait to see them. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. And if you like what you see, feel free to check around my channel. I'm going to do much more media commentary, kind of pop culture commentary and stuff, and give my takes from a leftist female perspective. Oh my god, which is kind of scary on the internet. I'm just going to let you know that. But hey, we're out here anyway. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I love you all so much. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye.